Hello, I'm Rosella, and today I want to show you how to make these super little phone spectacle cases. So these are really easy to make, quick to make, and you've got room in there for your phone. And I like to put a little buckling on there so that you can then attach your car keys. You've got a couple of pockets in there as well, so perhaps you've got some credit cards or something. And the idea was that when you go to maybe a restaurant or you're going out and there's not room to take a handbag, but you need to take your phone, you want to take your glasses, you want to obviously hang on to your keys, it just means that you've got a little pouch there that it's all nice and secure. So I've got one here that I've made with the bead at the front and different reverse. Again, that one's just got the one pocket. This one is embroidered, and if you'd like the pattern for the embroidery, then all the details are down below. And again, we've got two little pockets on there. And this one is slightly larger, so if you've got a larger phone, you can customize them to make them fit your phone. So let's begin. Okay, so we're going to begin with, let me refer to my instructions. One strip of fabric that is 4.5 inches by 21 inches. That's the back. The front fabric is 4.5 inches by 8 inches. So if you want to perhaps put some embroidery or something on that, that's the panel that you want to change for that. You've then got your lining panel, which is 4.5 by 14 inches, and what I've done on that is I've actually attached a little bit of fusible fleece on there, just a really low volume one, just to give it a little bit of padding. And then I've got a little piece of fabric there, and that's just for the little strap. Let me show you that. For this little strap here, or you could use some ribbon for that. This particular one is about 1.25 inches by 3.25 inches. It was just a snippet, so it might not be that. It's close. So the first thing I'm going to do is on my lining fabric, can you see the fleece I've made ever so slightly smaller, about 1/4 inch smaller on the sides and a bit more on the back, on the bottoms and the top, and that's just so that I don't get involved with the fleece in the seam allowance. So the first thing I'm going to do is put right sides together on this lining, and I'm going to just stitch with the 1/4 inch seam allowance down the two sides. So now you could pin this. I'm going to put a 1/4 inch foot on, give myself a bit of help here. There we go. And I'm starting right at the top. A couple of back stitches to hold it in place. And then we'll just pop down the side. Now I find these little pouches are great for going to the gym. So I've got one there that's got a bobble on there for tying your hair up, because you don't really need an awful lot, do you, when you're going somewhere like that. And the same at this side. Again, start at the top, a couple of stitches to secure my threads, and down the side. Now, I need to leave a turning gap. You could leave a gap whilst you're stitching, or I like to get a bit friendly with my seam ripper at this stage. If I could find it, I would anyway. There we go. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little bit out of the long side, just to give me a gap for turning. So let's just unpick a few stitches there. So you could, as you're stitching it, you could leave a little bit of a gap. It's entirely up to you. I just find this is really quite an easy way of doing it. And I find it quite a bit easier to actually judge how wide the gap's going to be as well. It's going to need to be a little bit bigger than that. It doesn't really matter if it's really quite wide, because this is the lining and it's not going to show anyway unless you turn your pouch inside out, which is pretty unlikely, I would have thought. Yeah, okay, I'm good to go on that. Let's just cut off those ends just so that it's neat and tidy, and then I'm just going to reinforce both those ends there. Again, it's entirely up to you whether you want to do this. It's not necessary because you are going to be stitching this anyway, but just give it a little bit belt and braces. And again, there we go, that's nice and secure. Again, let's just neaten by taking off all these threads. just throwing them into a bag down there, not the bin. Let's put the bin a bit closer maybe. And take away any excess bulk from those bottom corners, and you're going to leave this turned inside out. So you're finished with that for the time being. The next thing you want to do is you want to get your iron out, and you need some pins and a tape measure for this bit. So you're going to measure the pockets. Again, you can, once you've made one of these, I feel that you're probably going to want to customise and make a few of your own. However, for this one, maybe for the first one, follow these instructions, which I've put out of the way where I can't see them. Okay, so place a pin at right side of the tape measure, 3 3/4 inches. Now, there's not going to be any measuring please here, so if it's not exactly, then, you know, that's absolutely fine. Don't worry about that. It's about as straight as a dog's hind leg. There we go. And one at 7 1/4 inches. A further one at 11 1/2 inches. I don't know why I'm doing it on my ironing mat. There we go. A bit further into view, and one at 14 1/4 inches as well. So you've now got 1 2 3 4 pins in there. So you get your ironing board and your iron, and we're going to iron the folds into these. So I'm just going to bring you a little bit closer. The first fold, we're actually going to fold right sides together at that pin. So it doesn't matter if it's not exactly, just try and make sure that your sides are lined up, and that'll mean that your pockets are straight. So let's just press. So this first one, remember, was 3 3/4 inches. The next one, you're going to turn it over, and you're going to fold it right sides together at that second pin. And that one was 7 1/4 inches. Now you could use an air erasable pen to mark this. You could use tailor's chalk. Don't use a heat erasable pen, as you'll then erase it as you're ironing it. And I speak from experience on this one. Turn it over again, next pin. And let's just take it out before ironing it. And again, just to make those edges line up. And you can see the pockets forming. Turn it over again, and it's at that final pin there. Let's just line those up and we'll line it all together. Make sure that they're sitting kind of straight. There we go. Let's just turn that over and press it as well. Let me just do spend a few moments just checking that this looks okay, because once you've stitched it in place, that's it, it's in place. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to really close to the edge within the seam allowance. I'm just going to stitch down here and here so that when we're actually constructing it, the pockets stay in place. Otherwise, if they slide to the side, then it's just a nuisance really. I don't need to reinforce the stitching at the beginning and the end of this. It really is only to hold it into place. Now you could of course stitch this all by hand if you don't have a sewing machine. If you do have a sewing machine, it really is so quick to make. And again, I do like to get rid of any loose threads as I'm working. Otherwise they have a nasty habit of coming in the other side when you least expect it. Okay, now whilst we're at the sewing machine, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to attach the front to the back. Now you'll notice the back's a little bit longer. I've deliberately done that because if, like me, you don't measure super accurately, it means you've got a little bit of extra there. We're just going to cut that off before we attach the lining. So on this, right sides together, and we're going to stitch all the way around. Let's get it relatively lined up. It's not entirely straight, that's okay. As long as the sides are straight, we'll be good to go. And on this one, just make sure that you do reinforce your stitching at the top. Just makes it a little bit easier when we're turning through and cutting that excess off. So just whip down the sides of these. So we've got a little bit of extra there, and I'm just going to cut that off now. And also I'm going to take off those corners. So let's just take the excess off here. And again, I'm just going to get rid of all of those threads and find my scissors. There we go. Just so they don't get in the way. Let's take the corners off there, any excess bulk on there. Okay, and it's now time to do the little strap. So you just need your iron for this. So on your little tag, make it a little bit flatter. I'm going to fold both the outsides towards the centre, so they kind of meet. Just press those in place. And then what I'm going to do is then I'm going to fold it all in half, press it again, and then I'm just going to stitch down here just to hold it in place. Again, no need to reinforce these, but do cut your threads off. Throw them into the bag. Right, now what we're going to do is we're going to just fold this little tag in half. I'm going to decide where on the pouch you'd like it to hang, and we're going to stitch it on now rather than later, because it doesn't matter if we forget, but it's easy to. I think I'm going to stitch it sort of quite close, you see, to the edge, to the seam there. Not right on the seam, because that'll prevent my pouch folding straight, but just close to the seam there. So make sure that it's within your pouch, not on the outside. And make sure it's facing that way, not that way. That'll come later. So all I'm going to do now is attach it there. So I'm just going to press that. She says with confidence, that seam allowance open. Come on, open. That's it. I'm going to stitch it in there. And again, stitch it within the seam allowance. Got those threads down again so they're not in the way. And now it's time to put it together. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn the lining through, just temporarily. That feels really nice with that fleece in, actually. And then we're going to place the lining inside the pouch so that we've got right sides together. So pop it in there. And then on both the lining piece and the outer pouch, if you can, open your seam allowances so that they're flat. Just reduces the bulk again. It's not critical if it folds in whilst you're stitching. It's, in my opinion, not worth unpicking for, but open them if you can. And put a pin in there. It's already closed. Look, it's gonna close for me, isn't it, that? Okay. Do as I say, not as I do at this point. So let's pin that together, and at the other side as well. So if we can just kind of finger press those open and line up the edges. I realise now that it would have been so much easier if I'd used a contrasting fabric for the lining, and that's the beauty of hindsight, but there we go. Now all we're going to do now is just stitch around the inside 1/4 inch all the way around. As you get to your pins, take them out, don't stitch through them. Okay, and I realise it's a little bit fiddly because it's only a small area, but once you've stitched it, you've stitched it and it's done. And then again, I'm going to take these threads out of the way. And then we're ready to turn it. So we're going to pull your lining back through, go to the gap that you left. If you get to this point and think, oops, I forgot to put a gap in, that's okay. Just use your seam ripper and put a little hole in there, and then turn it all through. Push your corners through whilst you've still got the opening in the lining, and then when you're happy, all you need to do then is just stitch up that opening. You can do this by hand. I'm actually going to do it by machine. And then when it's stitched up, you can then turn your lining inside the pouch. And I'm just going to finish by top stitching around the edge here. And here's the finished pouch. I've got a little book ring that I'm going to pop through the loop there. I quite like to use a book ring because it means that if you're going to put your keys on and off, it's easy. And I'm really happy with that because that matches a dress that I've just made. And I hope you enjoy making your little phone spectacles pouches, and that if you do, please do tag me on social media and the details will follow. And enjoy. If you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe.